Most affairs collapse because somebody gets careless. Mine collapsed because a man left his shirt in my house. Rebecca walked through the front door at 1:47 a.m. carrying her leather laptop bag and the same polished smile she used after every client dinner. Then she saw the kitchen island. The smile died first. A navy blue Oxford shirt sat folded beside a half-empty glass of whiskey. My phone rested next to it, screen glowing bright enough for her to read the message before she even touched it. "Tell Chris I want my shirt back." She froze hard enough that I saw the exact second her brain started calculating damage. Most people think betrayal looks dramatic. Raised voices, crying, slammed doors. Real betrayal looks quieter. It looks like a woman standing motionless under recessed kitchen lighting while mentally auditing every lie she told over the last 12 months. I stayed seated at the far end of the kitchen table with my hands wrapped around the whiskey glass. Rebecca glanced toward me, then toward the shirt again. Her pupils tightened. Tiny reaction. Lawyer reflex. She always processed danger in stages. First emotion, then strategy, then survival. "Ethan," she said carefully, like somebody stepping onto cracked ice. I studied her expression instead of answering. 17 years together teaches a man where the truth leaks out. Rebecca's mouth stayed calm. Her shoulders betrayed her. Tight. Elevated. Defensive. Earlier that evening, she texted me at 6:12 p.m. late dinner with clients. "Don't wait up." Same wording she used 3 Thursdays earlier. Same wording from February. Same wording from a conference in Scottsdale where the hotel receipt showed 2 steak dinners charged to her room at 11:08 p.m. I stopped believing coincidences around springtime. Patterns interest me more than excuses. Construction management trains your brain that way. You spend 20 years reviewing structural failures, budget discrepancies, subcontractor fraud, hidden corrosion inside concrete. Marriages rot using the same principles. Hairline cracks first, then pressure shifts, then collapse. Around 8 months ago, Rebecca started guarding her phone during dinner. 6 months ago, she opened a separate Chase account tied to a consulting bonus she never mentioned. 4 months ago, I hired a forensic accountant through a corporate attorney in Cherry Creek after spotting recurring Uber Black charges ending near the Halcyon Hotel downtown. 2 months ago, I installed a passive network monitor on our home router because Rebecca suddenly started routing her laptop traffic through encrypted VPN sessions after midnight. That decision gave me Chris Dalton, regional sales director, 43 years old, divorced, 3 golf memberships, 1 condo in Lodo. One weakness for married women who liked expensive restaurants and secret routines. Rebecca finally picked up the shirt with careful fingers like the fabric itself carried fingerprints. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Better question. She already knew where I got it. I watched her search for the version of me she still controlled. The exhausted husband. The distracted provider. The guy who grilled burgers on Sundays while she rewrote the marriage behind encrypted text threads and deleted calendars. That version disappeared 3 weeks ago when my attorney finalized the asset shield for our brokerage accounts and transferred the lake property into an irrevocable family trust under my sister's name. Rebecca still thought she stood on solid ground. She still thought I reacted emotionally. That was her biggest mistake. I slid a manila folder across the kitchen table. Her eyes dropped toward it automatically. Financial statements, bank transfers, hotel invoices, parking garage timestamps. Then her breathing changed when she saw the final page sitting on top. A printed screenshot from 3 nights earlier. Chris texting her at 12:14 a.m., "Make sure your husband never finds out about Denver." Rebecca slowly lifted her eyes back toward me. Then my phone buzzed again on the counter. Her face turned pale before I even looked at the screen. Chris Dalton calling. Chris kept calling. Rebecca stared at the screen like it held a detonator. I reached over, flipped the phone face down, and took another sip of whiskey. "You should answer him," I said. My voice came out steady enough to make her nervous. Rebecca stayed frozen beside the island, fingers gripping the folded shirt so tightly the fabric wrinkled under her nails. I watched her mind work through options. Deny, redirect, minimize, cry if necessary. Attorneys learn that sequence early. She tried the safest route first. "This is not what you think." That sentence almost made me laugh. 12 months of encrypted messages. Hotel invoices tied to her corporate card. Shared Uber receipts ending near Chris Dalton's condo after midnight. A second phone line hidden under a business expense account. She still approached this like a misunderstanding instead of an operation that finally collapsed under sloppy logistics. I opened the folder again and slid another document toward her. A spreadsheet. Clean columns. Dates highlighted in yellow. "You tracked me?" she asked quietly. "I audited inconsistencies," I replied. Important distinction. Around May, Rebecca started transferring exactly $1,800 every Friday into a savings account ending in 4421. Same amount. Same time. Automated behavior always leaves fingerprints. I flagged the account through our joint tax documents after noticing quarterly interest income that never touched our primary statements. Then came the hotel charges. Then came Chris. The affair itself barely surprised me. Human beings chase validation every day. What interested me was the architecture around the deception. Rebecca built layers. Burner applications. Calendar edits. Delayed transaction posting through Apple Pay. She studied concealment the same way I studied structural risk reports. That part fascinated me. "You went through my accounts?" she asked. "Our accounts," I corrected. Her jaw tightened. There it was again. Ownership panic. Earlier that year, Rebecca pushed hard for expanded access to my business distributions from Walker Commercial Development. At the time, she framed it as better transparency between spouses. 3 months later, she met with a divorce attorney downtown under her maiden name. I know because my attorney subpoenaed the consultation invoice last week. That detail shifted everything for me. Affairs damage marriages. Planned exits expose character. Rebecca finally set the shirt down and crossed her arms. Defensive posture now. Anger stage arriving right on schedule. "You invaded my privacy." I leaned back slowly. "You opened a private mailbox near Cherry Creek 6 months ago under Rebecca Collins." Her face lost color again. "You met with family law specialists twice in August." "You requested projected settlement estimates based on my company valuation." "You forwarded Chris screenshots from our brokerage account 3 days after our anniversary dinner." Silence spread across the kitchen. Heavy. Sharp. Rebecca looked at me differently now. Earlier, she saw an emotional husband reacting to betrayal. Now she saw a man who spent months building countermeasures while she focused on secrecy and excitement. Big difference. I stood up and walked toward the built-in desk near the living room archway. A black legal binder sat beside my laptop. Tabs marked property, equity, trusts, custody, tax exposure. Rebecca followed my eyes toward it and swallowed hard. "You planned all this?" she asked. "I prepared for impact," I answered. "Construction guys understand collapse loads. You reinforce before the beam cracks through the ceiling." Her breathing turned shallow after that. Because somewhere inside her, the math finally changed. She expected guilt. Maybe rage. Maybe begging. Instead, she found financial containment, documented evidence, and a husband who already moved half his liquid assets beyond immediate reach. Then her own phone buzzed inside her purse. Rebecca pulled it out instinctively. One message preview lit up the screen before she could hide it. "Chris, your husband just emailed me." Rebecca unlocked her phone so fast, she almost dropped it. Her eyes scanned the message once, then twice, like the words might rearrange themselves into something survivable. I already knew exactly what Chris saw because I wrote the email 30 minutes earlier while she drove back from downtown pretending her marriage still existed. Subject line, professional courtesy. Attached file, 27 pages. Hotel receipts. Shared rides. Screenshots. Timeline analysis. Expense summaries tied directly to his corporate card. Enough material to turn his quiet affair into a human resources disaster before sunrise. Rebecca looked up slowly. "You sent him everything?" "Enough to make him sweat." She gripped the edge of the island hard enough for her wedding ring to scrape the stone countertop. "Why would you do that?" Another interesting question. She still framed this as emotional retaliation instead of strategic sequencing. Chris mattered for one reason only. He represented leverage. Men like Chris survive on image management. Sales executives build careers through perception. Reputation closes contracts long before numbers do. Around 2 weeks earlier, I started reviewing Atlas Biotech's internal ethics policy after discovering Rebecca attended their private executive retreat in Aspen using a guest registration under the name Rebecca Collins instead of Walker. Public companies archive everything. Vendor logs, travel reimbursements, event manifests. Once I understood the affair touched corporate expense reporting, the power balance shifted. Affairs create embarrassment. Financial misconduct creates panic. You are trying to destroy his career, Rebecca whispered. I am protecting my assets. Her face twisted after that. Pain mixed with calculation. She still searched for a route back into control. Then she made the mistake every guilty person makes once pressure reaches the right temperature. She underestimated how much I already knew. Chris told me you seemed distracted lately, she said carefully. He thought maybe you were seeing someone too. I laughed once. Short. Cold. Your boyfriend suggested I was cheating? Rebecca folded her arms tighter. He thought maybe we both checked out of this marriage a long time ago. There it was. Shared justification. Classic contamination strategy. Turn betrayal into mutual failure. Dilute guilt through emotional revision. I walked toward the kitchen drawer, pulled out a second burner phone, and tossed it onto the counter beside her purse. Rebecca stared at it like it carried explosives. You left that in your car Tuesday night, I said. Under the passenger's seat. Her lips parted slowly. You searched my car? You transferred $4,000 into a prepaid legal retainer 3 days after opening this phone line. Her breathing sped up again. Tiny shallow pulls through her nose. Panic always arrives physically first. How long, she asked. Since June. That answer hit harder than the evidence itself. Because June meant cookouts with neighbors. Family dinners. Her birthday trip to Scottsdale. Sunday mornings drinking coffee beside me while secretly coordinating hotel reservations through encrypted messaging apps. Most men picture affairs as reckless passion. Real affairs look administrative. Calendar management. Banking adjustments. Risk calculations. Backup stories. Rebecca sank into one of the bar stools and rubbed her forehead with trembling fingers. For the first time all night, she looked exhausted instead of defensive. You spent months building a case against me, she muttered. I spent months understanding who I married. Silence settled between us again. Heavy silence. Adult silence. The kind that grows after trust dies and logistics take over. Then Rebecca looked toward the legal binder again. What happens now? She asked quietly. I reached into the binder and removed a sealed envelope. Thick cream paper. Law office stamp across the front. Her eyes locked onto it instantly. Tomorrow morning, I said. My attorney files formal discovery requests. Rebecca swallowed hard. Discovery for what? I slid the envelope across the counter toward her. For the lawsuit Chris is about to receive from his own company. Rebecca grabbed the envelope before I finished speaking. Her fingers moved fast now, driven by survival instead of shock. She tore the seal open and scanned the first page with the same sharp focus I used to admire during her trial prep nights years ago. Then her expression shifted again. Smaller this time. Colder. Tortious interference? She asked quietly. Breach of fiduciary policy exposure. Misuse of executive travel accounts. Ethics violations tied to vendor contracts. I replied. My attorney enjoys thorough paperwork. Rebecca looked up at me like she finally realized the ground beneath her kept moving every time she thought she found balance. Chris made a catastrophic mistake 3 months earlier during a biotech conference in Phoenix. He billed 2 adjoining suites under separate expense classifications to bypass automatic review thresholds inside Atlas Biotech's reimbursement software. Most executives assume accounting departments skim reports for totals only. Wrong assumption. Software flags repetition patterns. Matching timestamps. Duplicate vendor structures. My forensic accountant spotted the sequence within 48 hours after I gained access to Rebecca's archived email backups through our shared cloud account. One hidden affair creates emotional damage. Corporate fraud creates discoverable evidence. Huge difference. Rebecca kept flipping pages. Hotel invoices. Travel summaries. Internal policy excerpts highlighted in yellow. Then she stopped at a screenshot from Chris's LinkedIn account. His smiling headshot sat beside a highlighted sentence from Atlas Biotech's Executive Ethics Code. Employees must disclose personal relationships that may compromise professional judgment or financial transparency. Her shoulders sank slightly after that. You built a litigation package, she muttered. I built leverage. This could ruin him. He entered my marriage and my finances while representing a publicly traded company. I stepped closer to the island and tapped the final section of the file. Actions create exposure. Rebecca stared at the paperwork another few seconds before setting it down carefully. She understood now. Affairs survive secrecy. Exposure kills momentum. Chris probably spent the last 10 minutes pacing his condo while reading the realization that his career sat inside another man's legal binder. Rebecca finally lifted her eyes toward me again. What do you want? Honest question at last. No excuses. No fake confusion. Just strategy. I respected that more than the lies. Full disclosure, I answered. Every account. Every transfer. Every conversation involving divorce planning. Every communication involving company assets or settlement projections. You are treating this like an acquisition. Because you treated our marriage like an exit strategy. Her jaw tightened again. That one landed exactly where I wanted. Rebecca opened her mouth to argue, then stopped herself halfway through. Smart move. We both knew the timeline already buried her. 6 months of legal consultations. 4 months of hidden banking activity. 3 months coordinating with Chris through encrypted apps. 1 month researching Colorado Asset Division statutes during office hours from her work laptop. She underestimated digital footprints. Most people do. Search histories tell stories once emotions enter the equation. You monitored my searches? She asked. Your work account synced through the home network twice. Her face went pale again. Jesus Christ, Ethan. You looked up average alimony outcomes on July 19th at 11:14 p.m. Then you searched executive compensation, shielding 40 minutes later. Silence. Deep silence this time. Rebecca pressed both palms against the counter like she needed physical support to stay upright. The psychological shift fascinated me. Earlier she saw herself as the sophisticated one, the prepared one. Now she looked at me like a stranger sitting across from her wearing my face. Then her phone buzzed again. Another message from Chris. Rebecca glanced down instinctively. I watched the blood drain from her expression before she even turned the screen toward me. Atlas Biotech Human Resources requested an emergency executive meeting at 7 a.m. Attached below the message sat a forwarded copy of my email. Except this version included something Rebecca had never seen before. A second attachment labeled, Financial Transfers Linked to Rebecca Walker. Rebecca stared at the second attachment like it carried a prison sentence. Her thumb hovered over the screen while her breathing turned uneven again. What transfers? She asked quietly. I walked back toward the table and opened my laptop. 3 spreadsheets filled the screen. Timestamp columns. Routing numbers. Merchant codes. Chris reimbursed you through a consulting shell account called Cedar Grove Solutions, I said. 6 payments. $42,000 total. Rebecca blinked hard. That money came from freelance branding work. Interesting story. I clicked another tab open. Because Cedar Grove Solutions shares an accountant with Dalton Strategic Partners. Her face tightened instantly after hearing Chris's last name connected directly to the transfers. There it was. Real panic. The affair itself still lived in emotional territory. Financial trails changed the battlefield completely. You traced business filings? She asked. Public records cost $30 online. Months earlier, I spent one Saturday reviewing LLC registrations while Rebecca attended what she called a Women in Leadership Networking retreat in Aspen. The retreat lasted 48 hours. Her hotel keycard records showed she entered Chris Dalton's suite 7 times during that period. Atlas Biotech executives love luxury resorts. They also leave electronic footprints everywhere. Rebecca slowly lowered herself onto the stool again, shoulders curling inward now. Exhaustion started replacing arrogance. You think I sold information to him? She whispered. I think you opened financial exposure during an active affair with a corporate executive who handled vendor negotiations connected to my commercial developments. She looked up sharply after hearing that. What? I opened another folder and slid a printed contract toward her. Atlas Biotech planned a new research expansion campus outside Boulder. Walker Commercial Development submitted preliminary infrastructure bids 4 months earlier through a subcontractor consortium. Rebecca stared at the paperwork for several seconds before understanding reached her face. Chris knew your company? Chris reviewed internal budget projections tied to projects involving my network. Her lips parted slowly. Jesus, exactly. Earlier, she thought this story centered around cheating spouses and damaged feelings. Now she realized federal compliance auditors might eventually read some of the same documents sitting on my kitchen table. Huge difference. I leaned against the counter and watched her process the implications. The moment you discussed my business holdings with him, you created discovery risk. Rebecca pressed her fingers against her temple. I never gave him confidential files. You forwarded screenshots from our brokerage account and mentioned projected land acquisitions connected to Boulder. That was personal conversation. He used those numbers during internal planning meetings. Silence again. Heavy silence. Rebecca looked physically smaller now than she had 3 hours earlier, walking through the front door, carrying her laptop bag and polished excuses. Affairs distort judgment. People inside secret relationships start believing emotion shields them from consequences. Then accounting enters the room. Chris said you barely paid attention anymore, she muttered softly. He said you buried yourself in work and investments. I almost smiled hearing that. Chris built an entire fantasy around underestimating me. Men like Chris survive by reading insecurities, I said. He told you what made the affair feel justified. Rebecca lowered her eyes after that. Because somewhere deep down, she knew I was right. Then I opened my email inbox and rotated the laptop toward her. 47 unread messages filled the screen. Subject lines from attorneys, compliance departments, financial advisors. Rebecca read them one by one. Atlas Legal Affairs, Executive Risk Assessment, Conflict Disclosure Inquiry, Temporary Preservation Notice. Her breathing stalled completely when she saw the final sender at the bottom of the screen. Dalton Strategic Partners. Why would Chris's company contact you? She whispered. I clicked the message open slowly. One sentence appeared across the screen. Mr. Walker, we believe Ms. Rebecca Walker may have recorded private executive conversations during multiple meetings involving our client. Rebecca's face turned white. Then she whispered something that finally interested me more than the affair itself. I never recorded anything. The sentence hung in the kitchen harder than any confession that night. I never recorded anything. Rebecca sounded terrified for the first time since she walked through the front door. Real terror strips away performance. Her voice lost the polished attorney cadence completely. I studied her face carefully while my brain started reorganizing timelines. Somebody inside Chris Dalton's world believed recordings existed. That changed everything. Who else knew about you two? I asked. Rebecca shook her head immediately. A few coworkers suspected something. That is it. Names. She hesitated. Bad move. Hesitation tells the truth faster than words. Amanda Pierce from marketing, she admitted quietly. Maybe Greg Holloway from compliance. Chris trusted him. Compliance. Interesting department for an affair built on hidden expenses and undeclared relationships. I walked back toward the laptop and reopened the email from Dalton Strategic Partners. Attached below the message sat a legal preservation notice issued only 6 hours earlier. Somebody panicked before my email even reached Chris. That meant internal damage already existed. I zoomed into the metadata timestamps. Rebecca watched silently while I scanned the routing headers. Sent from an internal legal relay server at 4:42 p.m. For hours before she entered my house tonight. Chris already knew he had a problem, I said. Rebecca frowned. What do you mean? This investigation started before I contacted him. Her expression shifted again. More confusion than fear this time. Then another detail clicked into place inside my head. 3 weeks earlier, Rebecca accidentally synced her work calendar through our shared iPad during a software update. Most entries looked routine. Lunches, client calls, executive dinners. One blocked appointment caught my attention because it repeated twice every month under a generic title, Strategic Alignment Session. 90 minutes each. Same downtown office building. Same private conference suite. I cross-referenced building access logs through a subcontractor security contact I knew from a previous project. Chris entered the suite every time. So did Greg Holloway from compliance. Rebecca slowly sat straighter as she watched me connect pieces she never realized existed. You think Chris is under investigation already, she whispered. I think somebody inside Atlas started tracing financial irregularities months ago. Then another possibility hit me hard enough that I stopped talking altogether. Rebecca noticed instantly. What? She asked. I rotated the laptop toward her and opened the attachment history tied to the legal notice. One file name appeared, repeatedly across 3 separate audit references. Aspen Voice Memos.zip. Rebecca stared at the screen blankly. I have never seen that before. Maybe you have. Ethan, think carefully. Her eyes moved rapidly now, replaying months inside her head. Affairs create paranoia eventually. Secret relationships thrive on excitement first. Then suspicion enters. Phones get checked. Stories shift. Tiny inconsistencies grow teeth. I watched realization start forming behind Rebecca's eyes before she even spoke again. Chris always carried 2 phones, she murmured. One for work, one personal. Anything unusual? She swallowed hard. In Aspen, he left one charging inside the suite bathroom while he showered. And Rebecca looked sick now. I heard voices playing through the speaker. Men arguing about contract bids. He grabbed the phone fast when he came out. I leaned back slowly. There it was. The missing angle. This affair may have started with attraction, but Chris Dalton apparently carried bigger problems than cheating on corporate retreats. You think he recorded meetings? Rebecca asked quietly. Executives record leverage when they stop trusting each other. Her breathing slowed after that. Fear changed direction now. Earlier she feared divorce, then lawsuits. Now she feared becoming collateral damage inside something larger than an affair. My phone buzzed again on the kitchen counter. Another email notification flashed across the screen. Sender, Amanda Pierce. Subject line, Rebecca deserves to know what Chris kept in Aspen. Amanda Pierce attached 3 files to the email. 1 PDF, 2 audio transcripts. Rebecca stood beside me while I opened the first document, and I felt her body stiffen before the file even loaded completely. Atlas Biotech Internal Risk Memorandum. Prepared by Greg Holloway from Compliance. 46 pages. Multiple executives flagged for unauthorized side negotiations involving land acquisitions around Boulder. Chris Dalton's name appeared 19 times. Rebecca grabbed the back of the chair to steady herself while I kept scrolling. What is this? She whispered. Insurance, I said quietly. Executives collect leverage the same way. Gamblers collect chips. Chris apparently built his own archive months ago. The report outlined private meetings between Atlas executives and third-party developers trying to inflate land values before the company publicly announced the new research campus. Insider positioning, coordinated purchasing, quiet profit extraction through shell investors. I recognized 2 LLC names immediately because my legal team flagged them during a due diligence review 6 weeks earlier. Rebecca leaned closer toward the screen. Chris talked about buying property before the announcement, she murmured. He said investors always move early. He used you to validate market projections. Her eyes shut briefly after hearing that. Affairs create emotional blindness. Chris probably made her feel chosen. Sophisticated. Different from suburban routines and construction budgets, and 17 years of predictable marriage. Meanwhile, he studied her access to my financial holdings the same way predators study unlocked doors. I opened the first transcript next. Automated voice-to-text conversion filled the page. The recording came from Aspen. Chris Dalton speaking with Greg Holloway inside a private suite. They discussed vendor kickbacks tied to the Boulder expansion. Then another voice entered halfway through the transcript. Rebecca's voice. My wife froze completely after hearing herself quoted in black text across the screen. Ethan still thinks Walker Development stays out of biotech contracts. The transcript read. He focuses on infrastructure. He never watches the investment side closely. Rebecca covered her mouth instantly. I never meant. You gave them strategic insight. I finished calmly. She shook her head hard. Chris asked casual questions during dinner. I thought he was curious about real estate. Predators frame extraction as conversation. Silence settled again while I kept reading. The deeper the transcript went, the uglier the structure became. Chris recorded nearly everybody around him. Executives, consultants, investors, even Rebecca. Men like him stop trusting loyalty after they start building hidden systems. Every conversation turns into future leverage. Every relationship becomes collateral. Then I reached the final page. One paragraph highlighted in red by Amanda Pierce. Greg Holloway speaking to Chris 2 weeks earlier. If Walker finds out his wife talked, he becomes our biggest liability. Rebecca looked physically ill after reading that line. They talked about you, she whispered. They evaluated risk exposure. Huge difference. I stood up slowly and walked toward the built-in bar cabinet beside the dining room archway. My whiskey glass sat untouched now. Funny thing about betrayal. At some point anger burns out and logistics take over completely. Amanda sent this because she is scared, I said. Compliance investigations spread fast once executives start protecting themselves. Rebecca stared down at the transcripts like somebody reading her own autopsy. Chris told me Greg handled ethics reviews, she muttered softly. He said Greg protected important people. Important people eventually sacrifice each other. I checked the timestamp on Amanda's email again. Sent 23 minutes earlier. Then another notification appeared underneath it. This one came directly from Greg Holloway himself. Subject line: "We need to discuss your wife before federal investigators do." Rebecca's knees almost gave out after reading that. Rebecca lowered herself into the chair beside the kitchen island like gravity suddenly doubled. Greg Holloway's email stayed open on the screen between us. "We need to discuss your wife before federal investigators do." 12 words. Enough to destroy sleep for the next 10 years. I studied Rebecca carefully while she tried rebuilding control inside her own head. Affairs run on adrenaline. Investigations run on timelines. The second world always crushes the first. "I never signed anything for Chris," she whispered. "I never moved money for him. Intent matters less than access," I replied. She looked up sharply after hearing that. Attorneys understand exposure better than most people. Once investigators start mapping communication patterns, innocent conversations turn radioactive fast. Shared hotel stays, deleted messages, hidden accounts, off-record meetings. Every detail starts forming a structure. Rebecca rubbed both hands over her face slowly. "Chris said everybody at Atlas played games with investments. Executives always say that when they need accomplices." I reopened the compliance memorandum and searched Greg Holloway's name across the document index. 32 references appeared. Internal monitoring, vendor steering, land speculation. Then one section near the bottom caught my attention immediately. Emergency data preservation request. Filed 4 days earlier. Requested by outside counsel after an anonymous whistleblower submitted audio files tied to executive misconduct. Rebecca leaned forward. Anonymous. Somebody inside Atlas started cooperating already. Her breathing changed again. Faster now. Fear started evolving into paranoia. That happens when secret systems collapse. Every ally suddenly looks dangerous. Every conversation feels recorded. Every missing text message starts carrying meaning. "Amanda," Rebecca said quietly. "You think she leaked the recordings?" "Maybe." I zoomed into the attached metadata from the Aspen transcripts. File origin timestamps pointed toward a cloud storage account created under a fake name 6 months earlier. Somebody planned this long before tonight. "Chris kept folders on people," Rebecca muttered. "He said executives survive by collecting leverage. Then somebody collected leverage on him too." She stared at the screen silently after that. I could almost hear the timeline rearranging itself inside her head. Dinner meetings, hotel weekends, late-night calls. Every moment she thought belonged to a private affair now looked more like operational risk wrapped in expensive restaurants and polished lies. Then she asked the first smart question all night. "Why are they contacting you directly?" I leaned back slowly. "Because my company connects to the Boulder infrastructure contracts." Her face tightened immediately. "They think you know more than you do. Greg Holloway thinks I might already possess evidence tied to land acquisition fraud. Do you?" I held her gaze for several seconds before answering. "I possess enough to protect myself." Important difference again. Rebecca understood exactly what that meant. Men in my industry survive by documenting everything. Permits, vendor bids, liability waivers, insurance exposure. Once I realized Chris touched both my marriage and business environment, I stopped thinking like a husband and started thinking like a risk manager. "So what happens tomorrow?" she asked quietly. "Atlas executives start sacrificing each other." Her eyes drifted toward the folded shirt still sitting on the island. Funny thing about that shirt. Earlier it symbolized betrayal. Now it looked almost harmless compared to everything surrounding Chris Dalton. Rebecca suddenly grabbed her phone and unlocked it with trembling fingers. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Checking something." Her thumb moved rapidly across old messages until her face went completely still. "Oh my God," she whispered. I stepped closer and looked down at the screen. 3 deleted messages from Chris had restored automatically through cloud backup after midnight synchronization. The final message read, "If anything happens tomorrow, wipe the Aspen folder before Greg turns on us." Rebecca kept staring at the restored message like her brain refused to process the sentence fully. "Wipe the Aspen folder before Greg turns on us." That single line erased every remaining illusion in the room. Earlier, she still believed she stood near the edge of a bad affair and a collapsing marriage. Now she understood she spent months inside a corporate minefield carrying gasoline without realizing it. I took the phone gently from her hand and enlarged the cloud sync details beneath the message. Timestamp. Device ID. Backup origin. Chris deleted the conversation 23 minutes before midnight. Too late. Digital systems remember everything. People panic and erase. You need to tell me exactly what sits inside that folder, I said calmly. Rebecca pressed both palms against the counter and stared downward for several long seconds. Photos, voice memos, meeting notes. Chris collected everything. Everything meaning leverage? She nodded slowly. He said executives survive by owning secrets before competitors do. I almost laughed hearing that. Men like Chris always mistake information for power. Real power comes from discipline, from structure, from understanding consequences before emotion takes the wheel. That difference saved me tonight. Rebecca finally looked up again, eyes exhausted and hollow now. I thought he loved me. Honest sentence. Brutal sentence. The kind people only say after the fantasy burns away completely. Chris loved insulation, I answered quietly. You gave him access to another world. My contracts. My investments. My industry contacts. Your relationship protected him from scrutiny because nobody suspects a smiling executive bringing his girlfriend to steak dinners. Her face collapsed a little more after that. Then she whispered the question sitting between us since midnight. What happens to us now? I looked around the kitchen slowly. 17 years lived inside this house. Mortgage payments. Sunday football games. College savings plans. Backyard cookouts. Tiny routines that once felt permanent. Funny how collapse arrives quietly. No explosions. No dramatic speeches. Just hidden accounts. Deleted messages. One forgotten shirt folded beside a whiskey glass. Tomorrow morning my attorney files separation paperwork, I said. Rebecca closed her eyes briefly but stayed silent. No begging. No screaming. She understood the weight already. The lake property transferred out of marital exposure last month, I continued. Business distributions route through a protected holding structure now. Joint accounts freeze at 9 a.m. She opened her eyes again slowly. You planned every move. I prepared for impact the second your stories stopped matching your transactions. Silence settled over us one last time. Adult silence. Tired silence. The kind built from choices nobody can reverse. Then my phone buzzed again on the counter. Another email notification. Sender, Federal Trade Commission Financial Crimes Division. Subject line, request for voluntary interview regarding Atlas Biotech land acquisition inquiry. Rebecca stared at the screen like she might faint. I read the first sentence carefully before locking the phone again. You are not their target yet, I said evenly. Yet. Cooperation changes outcomes. She nodded slowly. After hearing that, somewhere deep down she finally understood the real tragedy here. Affairs rarely destroy lives overnight. Small compromises do. Tiny lies repeated long enough become systems. Systems create momentum. Momentum crushes people who think they still control the direction. I picked up Chris Dalton's forgotten shirt from the island and folded it once more before setting it beside the legal binder. Here is the truth nobody tells you about betrayal, I said quietly. People spend months hiding affairs while their real collapse grows somewhere else entirely. Rebecca looked at me with tears sitting silently in her eyes while Dawn slowly approached outside the windows. Then her phone rang again. This time the caller ID read, Federal Investigator Mark Ellis.